Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever in the world you are. It is good morning for me. For Leen, it is, I think, good afternoon slash good evening. She's in Belgium. And it is, once again, it is a great privilege to be together with you in our Hacking HR interview series, where we're bringing a number of great global thought leaders to talk about different things that are important during and post coronavirus, if you will. So I'm happy to be here with you once again in our interview series. And please let us know where you are connecting from in the world. It would be fantastic to know where you are. And, let us know, just put it in the chat. If you have any questions during this conversation, please also post it in the chat. And I'll be happy to bring that conversation to that question to the conversation with Leen. And today we're going to be talking about something that is a really unique concept. And when I saw it out there, I got really interested in talking about it and in understanding more about it and the relationship between that concept and the world of business and the world of HR. That concept is the VUCA in world. I think for a lot of people, the concept of VUCA is pretty well known by now: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So a lot of people have been already talking about this concept for probably 20, 30 years already. It comes from the military, and now we apply it to organizations and to business and whatnot. But Leen has been working in the two other layers, two added layers to that VUCA concept, and that is the VUCA in. And in stands for interdependency and nestedness. So, Leen, it is a privilege to have you with me today, connecting you from Belgium. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Enrique, and thank you for inviting me to this nice show of yours. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's lovely to have you with us. And, well, why don't we start by you telling our audience a little bit more about you? What do you do? I know you are a biologist, you are an innovator. So tell us more about the work you do, who's Leen, and then we're going to get into the concept of the VUCA in world.
Yeah. So, yes, you're right. I'm trained as a biologist. I have a PhD in biology, but I worked for almost a decade in sustainability R&D. And after a decade of work there, I realized that we're still not getting to the point or the essence of what we need to be changing. And going back to my roots, I felt that many of the answers we're looking for are in biology. Because we humans, we have completely forgotten how life works. We're so out of sync with the natural world. And that is why we keep innovating in a way that actually degrades life instead of enhances life. And so I went back to my roots and I thought actually every company needs to have an innovation biologist, someone who understands how ecosystems work and how evolution works. And to take those two big fields of theory like systems thinking and evolution thinking and bring it into the corporate world to see how we can redesign organizations so that they are actually in sync with life, so that they abide by the same laws as life. And if we can manage that, then we not only create better and more fun work environments, but also more resilient, more agile, and more robust organizations. So yeah, that's
I
in
love
a
it.
nutshell a little bit about me.
I love it. And, you're talking about things that I am fully passionate about. And you can tell by my pictures back there, my hat.
Yes.
I am an
Yeah.
outdoor junkie. I spend a lot of time. I actually live in the forest, so I spend a lot of time outdoors. And one of my favorite, historic figures in the world is John Muir. And John Muir said that when you try to talk something out from the world, you find that something hitched to everything else, right? Nothing is disconnected from anything. Everything is
No.
connected. us individuals connected to each other, to the wholeness, and the wholeness connected to us. And those are the two words that you have been talking about with the VUCA in world:
Yeah.
interdependency and nestedness. So let's dig a little deeper into the relationship. First of all, understanding what is interdependency in this world of innovation and the relationship with biology, and what is nestedness, and then how we can think about those terms in the corporate world. So would you mind like driving us through those concepts?
Yeah. So when I was actually working in the corporate world, I realized that our two biggest blind spots are the fact what you just said, the quote of John Muir, that everything is connected to everything. Nothing exists in isolation. Yet we humans, we have this view of ourselves, of human exceptionalism, that we think that we can operate outside of the natural world, that we exist outside and we can do to the natural world what we want and it will not have any consequences. But biologists know that actually the law of life is the web of life. Everything is connected to everything. So there are always consequences for everything that you do. And that is what I mean with this concept of interdependency. So adding the I to VUCA. So we go to VUCAIN. So interdependency really means that that there is no isolation, that humans are an element and a part of nature. And we do not exist separate from nature. So that is the concept of interdependency. And in that, it's very important to also grasp the concept of nestedness. I don't know if you know Russian dolls.
Yeah.
It's like a doll, and inside the doll is a smaller doll, and inside that doll is a smaller doll and a smaller doll. And actually, that's also a law of life. That's the default status of nature. Every system is nested in a bigger system. So every system is actually a subsystem of a bigger system. Like the cell of your lung is part of the lung tissue, which is part of the lung, which is part of the body, which is part of the family, and so on. So nestedness is also a very important concept. And it's very much linked to the concept of interdependency, because the health of one subsystem always depends on the health of the larger system it is nested in. And that has a big consequence for how we treat our environment, right? Because, we might think that we can pollute and degrade the environment and that it will not have any impact on us. But since we're nested in the environment, what we do to the environment, we're actually doing to ourselves. So our inner and outer nature are connected. And that's why I talk about a VUCAIN world or VUCA-in world, because those two concepts are really crucial if we want to move innovation forward and if we want to prevent making the same mistakes as in the past.
This is such a powerful topic and a powerful conversation, I gotta say. But once again, it's I'm very biased towards this conversation because of the person who I am. I am, after all, or first of all, I am somebody who loves the environment more than probably anything else, and I try to sort of direct my life based on what makes sense for the whole, including the environment. And one thing that I am always very curious is the fact that innovators, companies, they look at the environment to mimic some of the things that work in the environment and replicate them in the corporate world. And you see, for example, that in the design of airplanes. When people started designing airplanes, they just didn't do that out of the blue. They observed birds and they designed airplanes accordingly to the principles that keep birds flying in the air. The question remains is, for me, why is it that we are copying nature to find solutions and innovations in the corporate world but we don't respect that nature that is providing us so much knowledge and so much information, right? It is just painful. So for people in the corporate world that they have tried to create strategies to respond to the VUCA world, how do you what do you tell them to respond to or to design strategies to the VUCA in world? How can they take this concept into account in whatever they do in their organizations? And for HR leaders, by the way, too. HR leaders, business leaders, and organizations in general.
Yeah. So in a world that is constantly evolving, that is volatile and ambiguous, interdependent, nested, complex, it makes no sense to develop roadmaps. Because you can develop a roadmap and it can be good, but the day after, tomorrow, the world is a new place and your roadmap just is not fit anymore for the new reality. So if we would take nature as inspiration or as a mentor for innovation, then if we can crack the codes that have been working for millions of years in nature and try to use those principles in the way that we organize our HR or our whole company, then we can start doing what nature does. And then we can start to develop companies that are evolutionary in their center, in the heart of the business making. And if you look, well, most biologists know this, but unfortunately a lot of people don't. But if you would look at the survival champions in nature, the ones that have been around for millions of years, then you can see that there are hardwired patterns for success. And probably the most important pattern for success is leave it better than you found it.
Wow.
In biological terms, people say nature creates conditions conducive to life, so conditions that are good for life. And so I think that is actually the challenge for the business world today. How can we move up the ladder and start innovating in a way that it leaves the world better than we found it before? And underneath that is really like the meta, the highest level pattern. Underneath that pattern, there are other patterns that nature does. For instance, byproducts are as vital as the product itself. So trees generate oxygen, and the oxygen is as important as is the tree. Mushrooms make rain, and the rain is as important for the mushroom as the mushroom itself. And we have been innovating in a way where we've been treating all the byproducts blindly. So we create something and it creates a lot of toxic waste. And we've been blind to those side products. But those side products actually have to come into the core of the innovation. So it's not only the products that get created, but all the byproducts that are important. So how can we rewire our brain so that we can innovate in a way that is more holistic, where we take into account also all the byproducts that we're generating? And for the HR world, for instance, the corporate culture is the environment in which all the employees have to bloom. So what kind of corporate culture will you develop inside your company? Is it one where people are afraid, where they don't dare to grow because their head might get chopped off if they rise above the field, Or is it one that actually stimulates risk-taking and where failure is allowed, where there's actually culture of learning from failure? So yeah, that's I think one of the lessons that we can learn from nature. Yeah.
It's a fascinating conversation once again, and not all the time do I find. I think it's very rare actually to find people like yourself that are connecting what seemingly are disconnected worlds, but yet they are interdependent and nested one into the other, right? The corporate world is nested into a larger system, which is the earth, the environment, nature. And I love that you bring this to the table because it is so important, especially now. We are so focused these days in coronavirus that it seems that we forgot that climate change continues to happen, and nature, just by I don't know, a coincidence, which probably is not a coincidence, is healing partially itself because we humans are, backing out or of the day-to-day sort of lifestyle that has been conducive to so much damage to this planet. So I love that you're bringing all these concepts together. One thing that you just said, which is fundamental in the corporate world for business leaders and HR leaders, is just to think about innovation not necessarily as the end product that you want to develop, but as the process that takes you there, because there's a lot of wiring, like it's happening in nature. There's a lot of wiring that happens in the process that becomes sort of the soil, if you will, for future innovation. And there's also the byproduct, right, which can become innovations in itself or in themselves. So that is so powerful. How can we help people think about these things, right? Because, let's be honest, right? Like, not everybody has nature as a priority in their lives, and it kind of sucks, and it's really sad. But not everybody has nature, and I don't think necessarily this is HR people, but some business leaders, they are like steamrolling ahead, forgetting that we're part of a larger system. So how can we inspire people to think about these concepts and how important they are for today's success, but also for the long-term success of that organization or of humanity in general, if you will?
Well, I don't think there's one answer. There's many answers. You can connect to their hearts if they are also if they also want their next generations to be well off, then you connect to their heart. But you can also connect to their mind, because if we keep working against the laws of nature, it will cost a lot of power, or how do you say it? Not power. It will cost a lot of energy, of work, and of money.
Yeah.
So it's just very smart to look how has nature resolved an issue and try to learn from it, because it will be much cheaper and much easier to implement something that has been working for millions of years, instead of trying to go against and work against nature. So I think that's an argument that might persuade also the people who are not wired to have nature in their highest esteem or regards. And I guess with the COVID feedback loop from Mother Nature, the virus, for me, it's actually a brilliant communication signal from nature telling us, like, this system is unhealthy. So either we listen to the message that she is trying to convey, because what has she been doing to us? She grounded us. She made us stay home. And so what is she actually saying? For me, she's saying, look, people, you have to learn to become indigenous again. You have to learn to start to work with what is locally available. And be rooted in the place that you're at. And while technology is brilliant, like we can connect from Europe to the US, but maybe our traveling behavior was too much. It went too far beyond the limits that nature can support. So for me, the way that nature has grounded us now is like such a brilliant move to say, like, this has to stop.
Yeah.
And so if we don't listen, we will get another feedback loop quite quickly, and one that might be much more severe than the one we have now. Or we do listen and we redesign the way that we transport. And I do see some examples in the good direction, like homework is now allowed in many businesses, and pioneers are saying we're going to make this core of our business operations. So you lessen the traffic jams and the emissions, and so yeah.
That it's just so powerful what you're saying, and that a lot of people do have brought that up. The idea that nature is sending us a powerful message these days, and maybe a warning too about all that we've done that is not working, right? And it's a very, very powerful. And there's a movie, I don't know if you saw it. It's called The Happening. It's by director M. Night Shyamalan, who is, to me, in my view, one of the greatest directors. And the movie is about the trees releasing some kind of chemical in the air that makes people suppress the sort of the hormones that make them avoid hurting themselves. So anyway, it's sci-fi, but it's a movie that which sort of principle is how nature can not turn against us, but can send us messages in ways that hopefully will help us wake up, right? Because the messages are there. Is that they haven't been that strong yet, but or like seemingly not that strong, but I think it's just so powerful. This conversation is so awesome, and I want to go back a little bit to the idea of what maybe, I don't know if it's a playbook or a series of recommendations that you may want to give HR and business leaders going forward. How can they think about this and redesign their operation and their workplace, taking into account the fact that nature, if we don't protect nature, if we don't do the right things, understanding that we're part of this natural system, we're just messing up with our own sustainability and our own evolution in the long term. I mean, we're just killing ourselves, if you will, right? So what's your message for those business leaders? What can they do to redesign their processes and systems?
Well, I would say that one of the first things that they can do is to go back and to biology and try to understand how life works. Because I've talked about this concept of nestedness and interdependency. And what is crucial in those two processes is the concept of value adding. So I talked about a long cell has to add value to the lung tissue. The lung tissue has to add value to the respiratory system. The respiratory system has to add value to your body. And so what we have been missing as humans is what's our value adding role here on planet Earth? And I guess that is what we on a meta level need to figure out, but also on a corporate level. What is our new role that we have to play? And so I would actually say that HR is dead and we need to move to HD. So move from human resources, which is still the old world, mechanical worldview, to human development, to think about how can we develop the capacity to play a new role and to add value to our team, to our organization, to the communities we're embedded in, to the bioregion and to the planet that we live in. And so for me, this whole concept of shifting from thinking functionally, like that employee has to do that job and that employee has to do that job, it's thinking developmentally. What is the potential that's inherent in every human being? And how can management create the conditions for that essence and for that potential to come out and to bloom or to thrive? I don't know, I guess a good metaphor is if you're in the gardening world, you can pull a plant as much as you want, but you won't make it grow faster. But if you provide sun and water and nutrients, the plant will grow. And I guess in terms of leadership, that is what leadership needs to be about. How can you create the right enabling conditions so that employees can develop and evolve into a new role of value adding to the bigger systems that they are part of? And that also applies for the company. How can the company become an enabler for good? How can the company leave the world better than it found it?
I absolutely love that, and I want to connect that with also with the idea of HR and business leaders removing waste from the journey, if you will, because adding value is not, in my view, is not always creating something new or doing something old in a new way. It is also removing the waste that prevents us to, achieve, like you said before, achieve that potential and develop humans in a sustainable manner. And very often you find that in the workplace, and this is very true for HR, you find that we continue to add layer upon layer of process, systems, policy, things on top of the thing that existed before, instead of saying, wait a second, does all of these things that are back here, do all of these things make sense at all? Let's just remove them from the picture and start either anew, knowing what we knew before, but start anew and create things in a way that remove the waste. Because all of that waste, think about it. I think about there's an image of a grocery store somewhere that is selling bananas in packages, and you think that is the most stupid thing in the world. Like, nature created the best packaging for a banana. Why do you have to repackage it in a plastic container? That does not make sense. In the corporate world, it's kind of the same thing. You have all these processes that if you go to the core, that's where you find the value, but then you package it around, policies and stuff that don't make sense. So I'm loving that you say this. And then the other thing that I, taking away from this conversation is that we are together in the world, right? I mean, some people think that we can fend ourselves away from the problems, or fence ourselves away from the problems by building walls, whether physical or mental walls, that separate us from either other countries or other cultures or other religions. And at the end of the day, what some people don't see is the fact that whatever happens in China impacts me here in Flagstaff, and whatever happens in the street here in Flagstaff impacts you in Belgium. I mean, we are all part of a complicated, comprehensive, interconnected system. And I wish, actually pray all the time for people to be able to say, we're all in this together, in different ways, but we're all in this together. And that is such a powerful idea behind the concept of the VUCA, interdependent, nested world.
Right.
Leen, any final words of encouragement or inspiration to our HR leaders and business leaders participating in this conversation this morning? And this has been perhaps one of the most amazing conversations that I've had, over the past few months. Because I love all that you're talking about.
Thank you. Well, concluding remarks, like you said, this feeling of separation it's an illusion. So we have to grow up and be honest with ourselves. So that's, for me, that is a really important challenge for the future. And for business leaders and HR leaders, I have maybe some inspirational quotes. If you look at birds, flocks of birds, they can dance in the sky in murmurations, like hundreds of them. They don't collapse. And there is no director, there's no CAO. The same for bees, colonies of bees, for ants, for fishes. So I think we can learn a lot from those animals and organisms, because they can self-organize without there being central command and central control. And I think there are the keys for our future as well. how can we, just like those organisms, self-organize so that we can leave all the red tape and all the excessive bureaucracy aside, but just have a good compass that's shared with everyone in the company, and a good set of principles that we follow, so that you can self-organize, that you're agile and flexible, and that you can co-evolve with the world and maybe create the future instead of being the victim of the future. So if you also have like this legacy that life has, because life wants to live, it creates conditions conducive to life. We're alive. So let's take that legacy in our organizations. Let's try to match the way that nature innovates. And let's be explorative, creative, and if we fail, learn from it, share it with the world so others don't have to make the same mistakes again, and let's move forward. I think that would be a very powerful way of looking at the future. And if they want to learn more, there are so many nice books about biology, about the way life works. And I'm actually bringing out a book next month called Natural Intelligence, where I'm sharing stories from biology, and also where I'm sharing what we can learn from these for business and policy making.
I would love to bring you back when the book is out there, and
Yeah,
talk about the book, and raffle some of them to our community. This
yeah,
has been,
I'll let
I'm
you
just
know.
mesmerized by this conversation. I gotta be honest. It's just so powerful to me. As I said before, I love nature more than hacking HR, which is the community that I created. So that says a lot. It's just so important to me. And there are a couple of quotes. One that I said at the beginning from John Muir, saying
Mhm.
that when you try to talk something out of the world, you find it hitched to everything else, and
Mhm.
that's important because we are not isolated
Mhm.
organisms. And when I say organisms, I mean individuals or organizations. We're connected to the everything. When an organization is polluting a river, I mean, maybe the water that is coming to them is clean, but they're getting that water dirty for somebody else, and that somebody else will have an effect on them, because it's all connected. And when somebody does, it's funny because when I think about HR, the motto or the mantra of hacking HR is to create the best HR that has ever existed. But I always say that, to me, creating the best HR that has ever existed is not for the sake of HR. It is because each HR person has an impact in the lives of many, many people. And if we create a better HR, we're going to have better employees. And if we have better employees that are finding more flow, connected to nature, that are happier, finding joy at work, they become better citizens. And then we may not be dealing with so much of the, awful things that are happening in the world these days, right? So everything is connected to the everything. And the other thing that I want to tell people is, like John Muir once said, is go to the mountains, go to nature, and get their good tidings. I think it is so important to be in nature. And if you can do it, and this is a personal recommendation, if you can do it, just go alone. Don't, I mean, I know you got to bring the kids sometimes and the family, blah, blah, blah. But if you can take a walk, a run, a hike, a bike in nature by yourself, just do it. Just breathing that clean oxygen, seeing how nature, in the place that I live right now, there are many aspen trees around, and the leaves are all green and beautiful, very bright. And then in 5 months from now, they will all be yellow. And in 3 months after, there won't be leaves. And then it comes all back to life, right? So you got all this cycle of resilience and love and, nurturing and, being born again. So it's just so powerful. Leen, this has been a fantastic, fantastic conversation. I am so thankful for you to have shared so many amazing thoughts. And one more thing that I want to say that you said before is, when people ask me about what HR should be doing to do better, I always say the same thing. I always say, learn non-HR stuff. And now I have to add to the list of non-HR stuff, learning some biology and the connection between biology, innovation, organizations, and work, because it is so powerful. Thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you so much for being with us today. Sorry, Leen, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, no. I hope that HR will take nature on board, and will go into nature, because creativity is actually also higher if you spend time in nature instead of in cities. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Leen, thank you so much. It was a privilege and an honor to have you with us. Everybody connected today with us, thank you so much for being part of the conversation. We continue to have more Hacking HR interviews and our Friday You Can Do It coffee series. A lot of stuff going on and trying to bring as much value as possible by having amazing conversations like this one today. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Leen. Everybody stay safe, strong, healthy.